Hey guys, this is Ben Morrison from Morrison Media LLC. Just wanted to say thank you for watching, and basically the reason I made this is I like to talk to other creative types, see how they got started, and just pick their brains a little bit on their process and everything. Really wanted to talk to Dahli. I think she is an amazing person, and I'm a big fan of her work and the way she runs her business. So I'll provide some links to all of her stuff, and just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I am going to start with a couple testimonials from her clients, and then we'll get right into it. So thank you.
So we just got done shooting our engagement photos with Dahli, and I woke up at 3:50 this morning so that we could have lighting for the sunrise, and it was beautiful. We've never done a photo shoot or anything like that before, and she coached us right through it, and it was really great. Made it feel more natural, I think. So it's worth waking up early and taking in this whole experience. We're only doing engagement photos once, so you might as well do everything, make the most of it. So
and for all you guys out there, I'm not a picture person at all, and she made it pretty painless and effortless, so definitely go with Dahli.
My name is Casey, and this is my husband Caleb, and we had some pictures taken for our anniversary this year, and we just saw them a few days ago, and we were just reflecting on the experience that we had and how special it was to us, and just everything about it was so wonderful. We just have nothing but wonderful things to say about Dahli and our experience with her.
I'm a traveling photographer. I specialize in weddings. I do some commercial work on the side. For myself, I do some photojournalism. So for example, I've been documenting the protests and the vigils and some things that have been happening in Phoenix. Don't live in Phoenix all year round, just for part of the year when the weather's nice. But because of Rona, I am now there for the summer, just because it's a weird time to be moving around.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I love travel. I've always had the travel bug. I've been traveling at a very young age. Like, I've had a passport most of my life. And because my family's from the Philippines on my mom's side, so like we visited there, like I've just had an interest in like gone to England and Europe and all these different places. Like, I'm the friend that people call and they're like, yo, let's do something crazy. And I'm like, let's do it. And it's usually something with travel. So I love traveling, I love photos, and I love love, which is kind of this, it's almost like a sadomasochistic thing for me, because even though I was married a long time ago, this is my 10-year wedding anniversary, but I'm not married anymore. You can cut this, you can do whatever you want with this. But like, even though I don't have it, I still appreciate it. And I find it fascinating, and I think it's really beautiful. And so being able to capture people being in love, and whatever it is about me, I make people comfortable in showing me the real side. Then you put them in this epic space. They win, I win, we make something beautiful, and then we output it into the world. It's like outputting positive energy. I'm contributing.
It is. And I think that was kind of the biggest thing, is I thought like you and me as individuals, I think, are very different. Like, not drastically, but I'd like say you're outgoing, I'm very like inward, and the way I see people talk to you is not the, like, I feel like I have such respect for that, because you can see that they are more comfortable right off the bat with you, and you have that rapport. And so I think that's one of the things that got me interested in this, is like, from the outside, I would say we're like very different, and that at the same time, there's a lot of things creatively that we're both trying to do. And so I think that's really cool, like just with any creativity in general, photo, video, drawing, anything you want to, any kind of creation. I think it's cool how people can be so different, you know.
But just so you know, how you described yourself and how different we are. I mean, obviously we are different, but I have never seen you, at least in our interaction, like how you described yourself. I've always seen you, like I see you as like very vivacious and open.
Vivacious. I've never been called vivacious.
But like
I
in
think
your videos that you make.
Well, that's like a part of me, and that's like acting. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like I act a lot when I have to work with a client. Like I'll be like, sometimes people will be like, we didn't even notice you were there, and I think that's like my true self. Like I like to just sit there and like just figure out the video. Like when people talk to me and I sense that they need that, there's like parts for everyone that you can like kind of fake, or you kind of like know, okay, they need this. They don't like need me to talk to them, but they're just, you know, they don't want like, they're uncomfortable with me just sitting there in silence. You know what I'm saying?
But it, also, just to add to this, I am a secret introvert. As a child growing up, I really didn't start being more outspoken until maybe high school, but I was always very quiet as a child and very nervous. And then I think in high school I just was in plays and I was in forensics, and I don't know, I had to come out on my own to like either advocate for myself, or you know, you just grow up and you change. But even now, like after I spend time with you, or I'm in shoots, or I have a wedding or whatever, I have to be alone, like to recharge. So being with people, it's fun in the moment and I enjoy it, but it's such an energy drain for me that I have to go sit on my couch, watch Netflix, and do nothing for like days to be normal again. I call myself a high functioning introvert.
Oh, that's good. That's good. High functioning. That sounds a bit of like addiction, but
I mean,
high functioning.
yeah.
So how did you, how would you like to do this? How did you get started, or where are you from?
Oh, okay.
All that
So
stuff. Just go for it.
let me tell you that rundown. Okay, so I grew up a couple hours south of here in a really small farming community called Potosi, Wisconsin, 53820. The road I grew up on out in the country was called Roller Coaster Road, where people would drive from miles around to come drive on our road because it was straight and it was super hilly.
It was an attraction?
Huh?
It was an attraction? People would come there?
It wasn't like a circus attraction, but everybody knew it as Roller Coaster Road because it was this long stretch of road that went up and down so much that if you hit certain bumps, it was like you're on a roller coaster, you know, and you're like, oh shit, in your car.
I feel like we're not repping Wisconsin very well. Like, we're like, no, we have a lot of fun.
It's
We have
so
Roller
much fun.
Coaster Road.
But you have to, you know, find your own fun when you grow up in the country. And so I grew up small farm, like a hobby farm, and it was my grandma. We lived with my dad's mom, my dad, my mom, and my sister, who's 7 years older than me, and kind of lived in the middle of nowhere. And I lived a very quiet life because there weren't really kids around. You know, my family. That's like a very Filipino way to say family. Family.
Is it really?
Well, a lot of F's are P's.
I didn't know that.
And like V's or B's. So like if my mom is going to get something out of the oven, she'll call it the oven.
Oven? But she doesn't do it like purposely?
No.
It's just something that overlaps?
Yeah.
Is it like because of just similarities in the way they are? Because you said V's or B's, and what's the other one?
F's are P's.
F's are P's. I feel like we're saying like the secret language of like dirty talk.
Yeah.
They're like F and the P, but not the V and the B. Like it's all these like dirty talk letters. You're like, don't F and the P.
You can
or the
make
V,
dirty talk
just
out of
the V.
anything, Ben.
You really can. I was thinking that because I was like, oh, something that I'm attracted to Dahli, and I'm like, well, it's not like an attraction. Like everything like seems like the first thing you jump to is like a sexual. I'm like, I am interested in. I don't know. It's funny, but I agree with that as well.
That's something that I want to talk about at some point. Is in photography, the difference between pornography and
pornography?
Huh?
What do you say? The difference between what?
The difference between pornography and
pornography?
Pornography.
Pornography. Okay.
Pornography.
Yeah.
Porno.
I didn't know if we were jumping to that point, so.
Well, at some point, if we could talk about the difference between pornography and art, I would love to talk about that.
Oh, like what is it called? Boutique stuff, or not boutique?
Kind of boudoir.
Boudoir, sorry.
So I feel like with photography, and then I'll go back to like I guess how I grew up or whatever, but in photography, especially this year and especially during quarantine, in a time where you would think that people would be the most stunted or the most challenged with their work. I mean, not that I didn't feel that at some points, but I actually felt like I had time to reflect and find one of my truer voices, which, you know, so I love and there's different aspects to it too, right? Like there's the laughy, flirty love, we're running in the field love, and then there's like the like you are so insatiable I can't live without you love. So how do you photograph that? Because that can be a really intimate moment without it being pornographic. And so I felt like during quarantine, because I couldn't see people, I was doing these iPhone photography shoots. So I would like be FaceTiming someone or using Facebook Messenger, and on my end I would have my phone and I'd set up some kind of flat lay with like, you know, roses or books or, you know, some kind of textured background. And my couple would be in their home with I would tell them how to set up their phone. And then they would get into positions, like I had a couple be in the shower, I had a couple like be on their couch. And so then I'm directing them through their phone, but I'm taking pictures of my phone looking at them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a whole different experience in itself.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. But I discovered that like, I really enjoyed that, and my couples really liked it too. And so for me, photography is a vehicle to the end. It's photography, and we talked about this last time, it's not the end all be all. It's a way to express. And like if I have the skill and someone wants to express themselves, like let's make it happen. So I had these couples that were like, here's this aspect of our relationship that we love. How do we document this in like an artful, tasteful way?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'm comfortable with a lot of stuff. I mean, you see my personal Instagram.
Well, and that's what I think too, is it's just up to like, because, okay, so I see this a lot because you work with all these different couples. And one couple is like zero PDA. Like they're almost like, we'll hold hands, smooch a little bit, you know, and that's it. And then other people, like you don't have to give any direction at all. They just like jump on each other. And it's like, it is tough to figure out, okay, this is what they want. Like if you're taking pictures of someone and that's what they want, and then someone from the outside point of view is like, oh, that's disgusting. You know, it is weird to me. It's like, I don't know, I don't know.
Because for me, if the vehicle is to, like, I have this need to, like, express myself, but also, like, help other people express themselves. If someone else outside of them is saying, ew, that's gross, like, no one likes criticism, but it's like, this is not your relationship and your love to criticize. Like, and I post it because this is what this couple is, and my hope is in my feed, and the couples I shoot, because very rarely do I shoot models. Actually, I don't know if I've ever shot people that did professional modeling.
Professional modeling.
Like all the people that I have shot have actually been in relationships. And so it's like, here's love in different ways. And if someone doesn't like that, that's fine. That's not your way to express love, but like that's their way.
And it's such a weird thing of like, people come in out of left field. And that's not even in photography, it's just anything. Like people come in on left field of commenting on anything nowadays. And you're like,
everybody's a keyboard warrior putting in their 2 cents. But I always question, would you say the same thing to someone if you were face to face with them? Or is there like, I don't know. You know, like yesterday I had to take an Uber to the airport, and it was very clear that the driver and I had very different views on the current state of things. And I was thinking about it because we were so civil face to face. She was also a good Wisconsin person. She grew up north of Minocqua, which I didn't know there was anything north of Minocqua. And
what are they like behind the keyboard though?
Maybe she would be. I mean, I don't know, but I thought if we were both behind our keyboards and couldn't see each other, would this have been a different experience?
I think that leads to like a lot of the problems that there are right now. Because like when you are face to face, you think of that way more of like, I'm talking to a human being, and there is just something lost. And it's just like in general, any kind of message. If I'm emailing, texting somebody, something's always lost in translation and they take it the wrong way, like no matter what. It's just so much of voice inflection is just lost, and like the heart to heart human communication. I don't know. Well,
and that's kind of the tricky thing about our business, right? Because if someone doesn't know us or we don't have in-person referrals, a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, all the time, people have to go to the internet to figure out who we are. So then through our Instagram accounts and our Facebook accounts and our website, how do we translate who we are or who we want them to think we are to our clients? And so my goal is, I just need, for my own sake too, I need to be as me as possible.
And you are.
Thank you. And I will say, the one thing I have heard from most people, and maybe you would disagree or agree, I don't know, is that when they meet me in person, they say, "You are who I thought you were." Or like you write how you talk. So some people give me a hard time about like, why are you writing in caps lock all the time?
Yeah.
It's because I'm consistently excited.
But I think that's one thing that I strive, like I see you and I'm like, oh, I really wish like I could be more like that, because it's such because you only get one chance at it. Somebody just looks at your stuff and half the time it's just like, oh, your price, nah, or something like that. They'll see one picture, make a snap decision. Rarely do you get to talk to them in person. So when the way that you portray yourself online, or be it any other way, is very much who you are. So it's like you found that voice. I think that's part of the thing too, is like some people haven't found what their voice is yet. Mm-hmm. And so they're just kind of playing that standard, you know, and I see a lot of people copy paste templates of like, how do you, what are you doing this weekend? You know, like to get the Instagram engagement.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's something that you've done such a good job of, is like things don't come off as like, oh, this is what I Googled, how do I get engagement on Instagram? It's more like, this is who I am, and people naturally react to who you actually are. And I think it's like any personality, like people naturally, you know.
I think part of why I have been able to do that is, so going back to your original question of how, like, who am I and how I got into photography, is that for so much of my life, I did what other people wanted me to do because I didn't trust myself. That by the time I finally decided to make photography my career, which was, you know, at 30, 5 years ago, so crazy.
It's crazy.
That I was like, you know, if this is going to be my life, and if I'm like forsaking all this stuff that I did for other people, which was like going to college for business and like trying to be a certain weight and like trying to be a certain person and giving myself a hard time for being like the weird girl or all these different things. And I was so sick of it because none of it made me happy anyway. I thought, if this is my chance, like to try photography full time and make it my life, what could that life be on my terms? Mm-hmm. That I wanted to try just being myself. I didn't know what that was, but I knew what it wasn't. And that sounds really cliche.
What is it?
It sounds really cliche.
Oh, you can take it.
But that's how I think I've found my voice, is because I've tried so many other voices that weren't mine. And I knew what that felt like. I knew it felt ick, or I knew I had to put a lot of effort into being someone else. Like, you can feel it, right?
It's so tough.
It's unsettling, or it's like you are physically tired from it. It's like that whole extrovert introvert thing we were talking about when you're playing that role. And I just felt like that in all of my life. And so now I finally have more energy to put towards being quote unquote successful and focusing on art and living my life, because I'm actually being me. It's a lot easier to just be me than to play like I'm someone else, or to play like I'm a certain photographer. And that's easy. Like what you were saying with Instagram and all that, it's easy to play into that. Like, did I put in my caption like lover of mac and cheese, like faithful follower? Do I have the perfect, and I'm not knocking people that use that, but do I have the perfect like orange tone and my first 9 squares?
Like, there's a lot of things where, like, for myself, I could just feel it being fake. Like, I had, like, what you're kind of going towards, which I feel like a lot of people feel is a job where it's so physically draining, like, you almost can't even go.
Oh my gosh.
And so, yeah, that's where I find out, and I see a lot of people who are, like, afraid to fail, and I feel like that's where I failed a bunch. Like, you figure out what you don't like, and I figured out just a bunch of stuff that I hated, and then you're like, this job, or this, whatever it is, doesn't cause that. Like, I don't have to physically wake up and try and do this. I was, like, excited.
Have you ever read the book Finding Your, it's either North Star or True North? Have you ever read this book?
No. I barely read. It's terrible. I should.
You should do audiobooks.
I should do audiobooks.
It is hard to read, I think, as a visual artist, taking another segue, because when we're working, we have to visually focus on something.
Yeah.
That reading is just another thing that maybe we don't feel like we have time or want to like strain our eyes doing. Audiobooks. But where I was going with that is, I had a job that I hated being at. So let's set the scene for a second.
Okay, so yeah, you should go back to how you all got started then.
Yeah, so how I got started. So how I got started in photography is when I picked up my first camera, this is where I was at in my life. When I picked up my first camera, which was about a little over 6 years ago, had no idea how to shoot.
Which is important for people. I feel like a lot of times in their early 20s or mid 20s, if you haven't figured it out.
Oh my gosh, your life is over by 25.
Totally had that feeling.
Life can just begin. So when I picked up my first camera, where I was at in my life is, I'd grown up in Potosi, Wisconsin, a small town. I was my family, we were the only people of color in the town. My mom was a quote-unquote mail-order bride. My dad was kind of quote-unquote the weird guy in town. We didn't have a lot of money. I mean, I showed you.
People said it to you, or you felt that way?
Both.
It was physically present, or was it more in your head?
No, it was present. I mean, I definitely struggled with some of my jobs in town. So I used to work at, actually one of my first jobs was I worked at an old lead mine. I mean, I wasn't mining, but I was a tour guide and I was doing canoe
Which would be an awesome visual.
Oh my gosh, right? I would have my little hard hat on and show people here are the badger holes that the guys would live in across the road. And then if you go up this hill, this is dolomite. And when they're blowing up the dolomite, they have this little thing that they click to make the hole and they turn it a quarter turn. Don't even get me started.
I would love that tour. That'd be great.
I could give you that tour if it was open. But that job where I worked different waitressing jobs, people in town, everybody knows everybody. And I would have gross people assume that just because my mom had done something like that, whisper to me and make comments that I would want to do that with them,
How
these
big is
dirty
the
old
town?
white guys. Well, the sign says 711. I don't know how many now.
So small town.
Yeah, so it was kind of ick growing up.
Yeah.
In that regards, I don't know how many people know that part about me, but so I just always felt really uncomfortable in my skin and I looked different than everybody else. I mean, I don't necessarily look Asian. My mom is Filipino, but I just didn't look
You don't look like white. And you're saying you're surrounded by all white people.
All white people. I didn't, other than seeing my mom's friends and their kids on the weekends, I never saw people of color.
Yeah.
And then I also I felt like I was bigger than everybody. And in Asian culture and in my family, it's people are trying to help you by saying oh, you look pregnant, or you look fat, tambok, and so I just was always surrounded by all these people being oh, you have a cute face, you'll grow out of your body. And so I was just never comfortable in my body.
Yeah.
And then I felt the only thing I had was school.
Yeah.
And so I tried to do well at school. So just growing up, I just never felt like I was enough. And so during the course of, I would say up in my teens into my 20s, I struggled with an eating disorder. I just had really poor self-esteem. I didn't trust myself. So if anybody that I respected, whether it was professors or people or teachers or adults in my life, if they told me to do something to get some type of recognition or some positive feedback, because I didn't have that for myself, I'd be yeah, sure, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And so I was a people pleaser. I didn't want people to not like me. But then that led me into this whole line of okay, well, I don't want to be the stereotype of this poor person of color that's just gonna not make it. I'm gonna go to school and I'm gonna be a business person.
Yeah.
Or a lawyer or a doctor or something to get out of this life that I grew up in, because that was.
And what age was that I'm for sure gonna do that?
12.
Which is half that. Most people think about that. Not most, but up to 24. Mid 20s. So you're halfway there, and you're already feeling that pressure of
Absolutely. And so then I ended up going to school, and I have a bachelor's and a master's. But that road was not an easy road either. So I went to school for marketing, got my bachelor's, but I didn't finish my bachelor's for a really long time because, long story, I actually ended up getting kicked out of my undergrad. Not for anything having to do with my performance, but it was all financial. And so because I owed this institution money, they still owned my transcripts. They wouldn't release my transcripts. I couldn't go to school anywhere else. So I was just kind of floating along with all of this college debt, working these dead end jobs in Winona, Minnesota, which was not fun. And then, but I had this couple that they were kind of like my guardian angels. I had worked for them, and I lived at their house for a couple months and took care of their dogs while they were out in California doing something, and they knew my story and what was happening with me, and they saw a lot of potential, and they're like, hey, if we can help you pay off your debt to this school, you know, if you would help us with our mom in La Crosse, Wisconsin, like there could be a trade-off, like if you could live with.
You had previous experience in that, right?
Yeah, so growing up, we lived with my dad's mom, so my grandma, and she is the reason why there's a lot of people that contributed to my life, but she's like the major reason why I am who I am. Mm-hmm. Definitely a soulmate. You know, I miss her a lot. She's been gone for 14 years now. But I had to take care of her in middle school and high school. I did not have a normal rearing like that. So at that point, I don't hold any ill will towards my parents, but they just were not ready to be parents. They had a really bad relationship. So like my dad at this point had moved out and was with another mail order bride. My mom had moved out and was with her boyfriend. So, and my sister was so much older than me. So by the time that I was in middle school, it was just me living with my grandma, who was really old. She was, like in her 80s.
Right.
And so she had broken her hip, and it was just up to me to, I had to wash her and bathe her every day, and I had to take her blood sugar every day, and I had to take us grocery shopping. If she ended up in the nursing home because something happened to her medically, I was living alone, so I had all these responsibilities put on me, and I had that experience taking care of people. And so going back to, these people that saw, they knew that about me, and they're like,
it wasn't just hey, can you help out? It was like, you've been doing that all your life.
Yeah, all my life. And I had also done some stints working with, when I was working these dead-end jobs. One of the dead-end jobs was working specifically with older people that were not unwell enough that they could still live on their own, they just needed assistance. So I would go and stay with people for a couple days at a time who had early onset dementia or Alzheimer's. So I had a lot of experience. And so this couple, their mother had just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so they're like, if you can go live with her, we'll help pay off your debt to this undergrad university, and you could go to school at Viterbo is where I ended up finishing at. And so I was like, yes, this is a
But that's another example of you're a genuine person. And so those things happen. I feel like some people would say oh, how lucky. And it's well, I think you're a genuine person who they wouldn't just say that to anybody. They wouldn't be hey, can you will do this? They valued you very much. And so even if it was, not a college debt situation, they would have paid you extra, or it's sometimes I feel like people look at that and they're like, oh, right place, right time. And a lot of times I tell people yes, but also you weren't an asshole. You know what I'm saying? You were I'm a good person. They got to know you. It wasn't they just walked off the street and we're just because I feel like some people are wow, they just walked up to you, and you're no, it's more than that,
Yeah, definitely more than that. And and they're still in my life. They're family to me, and since then their mother has passed away, but it was definitely a really great growing experience, and they really helped redirect my course in my life. And so then I ended up in La Crosse. I was going to Viterbo and finishing up school. So I finished up undergrad, my marketing degree.
And you were still I'm not a creative yet. You were
oh,
I'm
no.
gonna do.
Growing up, I was always interested in drawing. So when I was in high school, I made money on the side because my art teacher would give me pencil commissions that he didn't want to do. Oh. And so that was a side gig I did. I remember drawing a 1968 Chevy Impala.
Okay.
And he would pay me for that. So I've always been interested in drawing, or I used to take a nudie art class. I mean, I wouldn't mind modeling, but I would do that. But that was always shut down for me because, and I was interested in fashion at one point, but it was shut down because people that cared about me wanted me to do well. And for them doing well was be a business person, a lawyer, or a doctor. That was what doing well was to my mom, to my principal. And it was all out of love, but that wasn't who I was.
Yeah. I feel like I've run into that where people didn't know how to explain it, and I was interested in drawing and other creative things like that, and it was like they knew that it was such a long shot. You know what I'm saying? Like, they know it's such a long shot to do this that they kind of say it the wrong way. And they say a lot to you, like, why don't you do something that will actually go somewhere? Or like, why don't you, I don't know how they always phrase it, but I ran into that a lot. And I used to, because I'm 30 now, and I used to, like, in my teens and 20s be like, got to prove them wrong. And maybe there's still some part of me that's like that. But you kind of look and you're like, they just didn't want you to, they just know that it's really tough to do. I think that's what they're trying to say.
Right.
You can do all that. But like owning your own business is a full-time job, you know what I'm saying? And so like for anything. And so they're just saying, like, on top of it, not a lot of people buy art. Like there's like the 1%. It's like being like a star athlete. Like a lot of people get the like, why don't you do something more blah, blah, blah. And a lot of like athletes are like, I prove them wrong. And it's like to a point, but I also think they just don't want you to end up with no skill, no money, no other skill besides your creativity with no money
Oh, absolutely. I remember the day that I decided to announce that I was going to do photography full time. And so we have so much to talk about. So then at this point, when I decided to go photography full time 5 years ago, wait, I didn't even get into how I got into photography.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry, I'm derailing.
No, I don't even know how to. So I did undergrad. I finished at Viterbo. I got a fellowship through the American Association of University Women to basically pay for my grad school degree, which was awesome. So then I ended up getting an MBA from Viterbo, emphasis in sustainability implementation, whether that was like processes or renewable energy, and organizations, like how do they implement that into their organization? How does that impact their triple bottom line? Yada, yada. And during that time, I was also in a relationship and I was ready to get married. And then my dad also tragically died. And like about 4 years before that, my grandma had passed away. So like my 20s was like this hurricane of like pain and depression and just feeling lost all the time, being really fucking broke.
Yeah. So
broke. Like, to the point where, and I think I shared this with you in our last conversation, like I was living in a stairwell for like $75 a month. And it wasn't a stairwell, excuse me. It was the landing of a house that had like 8 people living in it. And
saying a stairwell was being like too generous.
Yeah, it's too generous. It was the landing of a house. And so this is how I ended up there. This was before I ended up in lacrosse. Super broke, working like 3 jobs. Like walking, I worked at the Starbucks in Target in Winona, and on breaks I would walk through the aisles looking for change so that I could buy cans of food. Like that's how broke I was. And even though I was working, but all of my money was going towards like trying not to like go into default with this stupid student loan I had from the school that I didn't even have a degree from. And like it's also around, like we're about to go into this economic slump close to around 2008, what I'm saying, like that time. It was a bad time, and I didn't have enough money to have a down payment even for like a shitty studio apartment. They want that money up front. I didn't have people that would give me that money. And so this barista was like, hey, we have like a very large landing in our home. It was like one of those huge palatial homes that they split into apartments in Winona. How they do that around here. And she's like, you could probably fit a bed there. I don't know where you would put your stuff. You could keep it in your car. Yeah. So $75 a month. And I slept in this little bed and I kept all my stuff in my 93 Geo Prism with a broken window. And I would wake up in the morning and one of the roommates, like his door would crack open and he dealt drugs. And so like sometimes I would wake up and see like he had this little scale and he'd sit on the floor and he was like measuring stuff out. Just being like, yep, this is my life. And I would keep like the clothes that I was going to wear that day next to me. There's integrity in making money, but like I'm in it.
That's like when people say like pretty close to the bottom, you're like,
yeah, this sucks.
Yeah, this sucks.
This really sucks. So then anyway, so that's part of my story. But it's like I've always been broke. I've never had money. Like growing up, we never had money. Like we were basically living off of like my grandma's retirement which was not much. My mom never really made money. My dad didn't make a lot of money. Anyway, so then progressing forward, I graduate from grad school. My dad dies. My grandma died a couple years before. I'm about to get married. It's this whirlwind of like craziness. And then my marriage, you know, I'll never speak ill of my former husband, but like we just shouldn't have gotten married.
Yeah.
You know, like I think we got married because that was another thing where I did it to please other people. Like his parents were kind of pushing for it. I had never really had like a real boyfriend before, so it was like almost validation of me being a woman.
Yeah.
Like, wow, someone actually loves me. Like, I want to be like everybody else. See, I can have a wedding. I could like have degrees and a life and like catch up. I felt like I was playing catch up with all these people around me that had gotten married in their 20s and had the degrees and had the jobs and all that. And that's not what ended up coming to
'cause
fruition
you're like,
for me.
I can too. And then you do all that, and then it's like,
Yeah, and then, you know, then it's, I ended up like, through a strange series of events, we had to stay here, which was not my plan after grad school. I was planning on going off and interviewing to jobs in Texas and the East Coast, and
because you were like big time. Like you had got all your stuff, and you said you were getting like big job offers, you know?
Yeah, in interviews, and then we just were not able to leave, and I don't know how much of that I can say, but because I will say it was because of my husband. We could not leave.
There was just because you were telling me this before, there were circumstances where you were ready, and it was put on you that if you moved away, that the situation would not be good.
And at the time I didn't really know a lot of people in lacrosse, so like this is not the town to have a master degree in something that has to do with sustainability and business and not know anybody. This is not the town to do it. So then I ended up I started with a job at the mall. But it's so funny because the jobs that I had leading up to my life now are relationships that helped me when I became a photographer. But I ended up working at the mall. And so going back to this book, Finding Your North Star or Your True North, I read this book as I was in this job because I was thankful to have a job. I mean, you know, it was minimum wage, seasonal, Christmas job. And I was doing shit like not showing up on time and like having a bad attitude and like doing things wrong and like forgetting shifts, which is very much not like me if I'm committed to a person or thing. But then when I read this book talks about how your subconscious knows what you really want, what you really should be doing, and you will subconsciously jeopardize yourself. So for example, 100%. When you were saying that job you had that you hated, it's because you knew somewhere inside of you it wasn't a good fit, you weren't supposed to be doing it. So that part of you is trying to set you up so that you're not doing it anymore. So price point is big, right? Because when you're first starting out, there's a lot of things because people don't know you. Maybe you're still learning to some degree. Because this was my case when I started. That I did a lot of things for free, or I did a lot of things being scared to ask for money because I didn't feel like I was still building up who I was in my own confidence. Yep. I didn't feel like I was good enough or that I deserved a certain amount of money.
For sure.
But then, so that only lasted me a little while though, because I'm a single woman. At this point, I've been divorced for a while. I'm a single woman. It's like no one else is paying my bills. I have to ask for money because I have to have a place to live. I have to pay rent. I have to pay electric. I have to pay my student loans. And I cannot do that unless I make X amount of dollars.
Right.
And I had been watching, because I'm scrappy and broke, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and there's this one photographer named Sue Bryce that I was watching, and she talks about some technique, but a lot of what I watched of her had to do with believing in yourself and how you project onto your clients.
Oh, that's good.
And so she was like, you have to ask for more money because you deserve it. Why don't you think you deserve it? Because if you don't think you deserve it, then no one else is going to think you deserve it either. Right. It's kind of like dating or when you're in any type of relationship with someone. Yeah. If you don't like yourself, how do you expect anybody else to like you? True. So this is also how I came to become myself that we talk about, that you say you're attracted to, like, on a friend, colleague level.
Yes. And that's it.
Yeah. And... yeah, no, I'm just laughing. Because Colleen's right in there. Is it Colleen or Colleen or Colleen?
It's Colleen. People
Colleen?
she'll say it's Colleen, and they'll say, okay, clean, and that's like her word. She understands if you say a name wrong, because you know, I'll even have trouble with yours. But once somebody says it's Colleen to your face, they'll say, okay, clean, and she's like,
I get a lot of Dahlia.
I could see that.
Because
Dahlia?
yeah, part of it is not necessarily how I spell
because
it.
you have like 3 names.
Yeah, so my real first name is 2 names. It's actually Dolores Mabel.
Dolores Mabel?
Is my first name. You know how some people be like Sarah Joe or Joanne?
I have a aunt and uncle, Mary Joe and Michael Joe is their first name.
Right. Dolores Mabel is my first name. I was named after...
Is that the Filipino version of Joe? Is Mabel? Because that's the only thing like I hear is like Michael Joe. I've never heard a second like first name.
Well, my mom wanted to name me after both of my grandmothers, and so my full name, I won't give you my tax ID, is Dolores Mabel Navalis Durley. So Dolores Navalis was my Filipino grandmother, and traditionally Filipinos take their mother's maiden name as their middle name. So my mother's maiden name was Navalis.
Okay.
My grandmother's name was Dolores, so Dolores Navalis. Mabel Durley was my father's grandma, so my grandma that I grew up with. So it's Dolores Mabel Navalis Durley.
Okay.
All smashed into one. So I've always had the nickname Dolly. Growing up, it was spelled Dolly. And then before I was a photographer, I was having such a hard time in the job market here because I didn't want to stay working at that mall job. I worked at Starbucks for a while. I didn't want to stay working there. I was always applying to new jobs, but like, to be honest, when no one knows you and you don't have an in, having the name Dolores on a resume doesn't look that great around here.
Yep.
Because even if I did get a job interview, when I would show up, people, I think, were expecting maybe like an older person or like older Latina woman, and then I would show up and it was like, I would always get I didn't expect that.
Yeah, people, and I feel like sometimes people are like, who haven't experienced it, are like, oh, that's kind of BS, or it's all in your head. But you can visually see in the first like 10 seconds what they expected, and then how it like shatters or how it changes, or if you meet their expectations. You can see that when you first meet people, because they won't even try and say it, but they'll be like, oh, you know, and you're like, you're expecting an old lady. Like you see it enough.
So how I got into photography was again in a situation where I'm super broke. I'm living in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, with my friends that just got married, renting a room from them, and this is after my dad had died. My grandma had died some years beforehand. I just realized how short life was. I also was divorced and broke, and just realizing and living the results of doing what other people had wanted me to do for so long. And here I was. I thought that by listening to people, I would have this like magical life where like I was married and had kids and had the American dream house and security and a job and feel good about myself. And really, I felt like fucking garbage.
Which I think a lot of people relate to. You get everything that you're supposed to get, and then you're like, this doesn't produce that feeling at all. Yeah,
and so then I just was trying to challenge myself to do different things. Like one year I decided to try running because I always felt like I was a fat kid growing up and I could never finish the miles. So then I started running half marathons, or just learning new things. And one of my roommates was a reporter for a local paper, and it was a small enough paper that he was not only the writer, but he had to take pictures for it. And so he had this really nice Canon camera and at the house that he didn't use all the time. So I'm like, I'd really like to learn. And so I had another friend in town that was not a full-time photographer, but liked to mess around. So she would teach me manual, and then, I didn't really learn a lot because I'm like,
for non-photography people, you mean manual, like doing all the settings yourself?
Yeah,
because
which I did not
manual
understand.
Again could be taken as sexual. She taught you.
I always go there.
Well, no, I feel like I do a lot of, when I talk with my wife, I do a lot of like shorthand. Not like a lot, like I know a ton, but like if I do shorthand, then people don't really know.
Yeah.
Just, you're saying like, that's when she really taught you how to use the camera where you're making the picture look the way because manual is like, this is what I want, versus any like setting the camera's helping you.
Yeah. And that was my first exposure to it. I did really poorly. But other than that, I was just watching YouTube videos. And so then I picked up my camera, and while I'm trying to learn how to even turn this camera on, I have a cell phone. I think it was like a shitty little Samsung. And I started my Instagram account and just started, I guess, playing with natural light and composition. And I remember getting likes on a picture, like, oh my God, I got 13 likes on a picture.
Right.
Like, I cannot believe this. Like, what?
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah, and trying to figure that out. So then I actually
it does feel good. Like I still have that. And I shouldn't. But when people are really, I don't know, just that validation, I still have that.
Same. I think we all do it to a certain degree. And but so I really learned natural light and composition on my phone. I would say that's where I learned.
Taking pictures with your phone, you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I learned that. And then I eventually moved on to the camera. And then as I'm learning more, during this time I also got a job back here. I was working at Sparta at a hardwood lumber yard, helping with some international sales and stuff. And the people were great there. The job was interesting, but it wasn't me. I wasn't talking to a lot of people. Like, I had coworkers, but like, it was weird hours. It was a lot of email. I worked with a lot of people that were buyers from China, so everything really did have to be via email because, you know, like translating and stuff. And we're working with high volume numbers. So anyway, the people were great, but it just wasn't a great fit for me. And so while I'm realizing, oh my gosh, like, I do not love how my life is right now, photography was like my creative outlet and my learning outlet. And it went from me being like, hey, can I photograph you? And me taking my camera everywhere and just snapping 5,000 pictures and just hoping like, okay, does my ISO match my shutter speed? And like, what's aperture? Shit, I keep forgetting what it is. Doing that, it went from people modeling for me to people asking me, like finding me, to be like, hey, how much do you charge?
I think that's a big moment. Sorry to interrupt you really quick.
No, please.
Game-changing moment of people reach out to you, and it's like, you are it's kind of understated when you're saying it, but it's such a hustle of like, you're doing a passion and you're literally giving it away. Like, you're just like beg, borrow, steal. You're like begging people, and you're like, all of a sudden that moment, somebody unprompted, you had never talked to them before, says, I want your services. It's such like a, you know,
it's
I
a
just
shift.
felt like it's like a big moment.
Absolutely. And so I don't know how the universe plays in your life. I have an eternal perspective. I'll label it that way. I don't want to get super religious, but I think things happen for a reason. And so it was my first paid shoot, and it was the senior shoot. And at this time, I was, instead of borrowing my roommate's camera back in Chippewa Falls, I'd moved. Oh my God. Look at him. He's so cute.
They're all interested.
Little red-winged blackbird.
It is super interesting. I agree.
He's so cute. And he's so loud. Like, we know you're here, dude. We know. We know. But so I wasn't using my roommate's camera anymore. I'd moved on to borrowing my boss's camera at this lumber yard. So then it's like a Thursday, and he goes, hey, can I have that camera back? Because my son-in-law wants to use it. And so he didn't know that I had my first paid shoot that Saturday.
Gotcha.
And
were you in a spot where you're like, should I tell him?
Yeah. And then I didn't feel like I could, because I'm like, well, it's his camera, so I just gave it back. And I went to bed that night being like, what the fuck am I gonna do? Because this is expensive. Like, I don't have money for this. How am I, what? And so I just went to bed that night being like, God, I like do not know what I'm gonna do. Like, my first paid shoot, and this is what I fucking got myself into. Cool, Dahli, that's so cool. And I woke up the next morning, and this woman that I had not talked to really, I would say, in like a couple years. I mean, like, we kind of kept in touch, like liking stuff on Facebook, but hadn't really talked a lot. I wake up and there's a message in my Facebook, her being like, hey Dahli, like, I don't know, and I cannot make this up. She goes, I don't know why, but like, I woke up this morning thinking that I'm supposed to give you my camera.
No.
I am not making this up. Oh my God. Yeah, Sammy Rogelski, if she's watching. And
Give her a shout out?
Yeah.
What's her name?
Sammy Rogelski.
Wow.
I went to Haiti with them years ago.
She said that?
Yes. And so she had done her own photography business, but she had like upgraded her like camera 5D Mark 1 5D to like the 3 or something. I don't know what she had upgraded it to, but she's
Yeah.
like, I just have this camera. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to give it to you. And I just remembered bawling my face out, being like, you know, we all have these moments where people are like, are you real? Or like, what's happening? And I'm like, if this isn't the universe telling me you need to do this and I have your back.
Wow.
Yeah. And
So now every once in a while you're like, new lens, new lens, new lens.
yeah.
Somebody appear with it.
I know, right? Save me some money.
Oh, I need another memory card.
But I was like, yeah, I need it.
What?
And so the camera
crazy.
that I built my business on was the camera that she gave me. And it was a Canon 5D Mark 1
Yeah.
and the nifty 50 lens from Amazon that's like $150.
Right.
Like, that was what I built my business on.
That's insane. So that Friday morning before your Saturday shoot,
Yeah,
and
she
you
like,
just went over there and grabbed it all, and
yeah.
that's nuts.
Well, and you never know, and especially like business is relationship based. Like earlier, you were saying people don't want to give money to an asshole. Basically, that's kind of
Right.
one of my rules. But also, like when I was in the depths of it, like because I struggle with episodic depression and like when I was really going through it and I was super broke and living this life I didn't want. It's interesting that the relationships that have mattered the most to me now for my business were the relationships I was cultivating when I was like not doing what I wanted to do and I felt directionless and sad, but I still cultivated relationships with people. It didn't matter what I was doing, but I had to find some happiness and I really enjoyed like being with people, even if it was
Real
like in the
ones.
drive-through.
Real relationships too.
Yeah, like especially so when I worked at Starbucks, I worked at the drive-through a lot. And so I would have people that would see me more than their own family. They'd come through and get like, you know, their venti, like, or a triple venti latte or like their venti green tea with the bag taken out by the time they got to the drive-through. Cindy
And
Gerke,
you
what's
know
up,
that.
girl? Like, but these people, even though at the time it mattered because they were my clients, like I made relationships with them, then ended up being some of my best clients
Right.
now.
And that's what I think is
Yeah.
you would find success in whatever you did because of
And
things
it's all
like that.
people based though.
Right.
It's about people, it's about being you and you know finding yourself. I mean people whether they can put a pin on it or not, they can smell bullshit.
Oh yeah.
People can smell bullshit. Also people don't like to give their money to people they don't like.
Yep.
So we'll cut back to when I first started photography. So I'm at this job, people are asking me how much do you charge? And I'm realizing that even though at the time I wasn't asking for a lot, it was enough where I'm like, holy crap, like as I
Yeah.
told you earlier, I've been so broke.
Yeah.
My ass was picking up change, looking for, you know, to buy a can of beans to make it through. I know how to be broke, and I am
Yeah.
so sick and tired of this life that I have chosen to live so far. I want to do something different. So if that means I have to be broke on my terms and I just give photography a shot, I would rather do it that way than keep doing what I'm doing. So then in October, I think of 2015, I decided to go full-time photography, which was obviously the
You
right
decided
choice.
to go full time right away?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right away. But then I wasn't really working because guess what? No one knew me. I mean, my work was okay, but
It's
like,
kind of a high of when you have a client, even still to this day, I'll have like 3 clients in 1 week and I'll be like, I'm rolling. And then like the next 2 weeks, no one knocks on my door at all. And I'm like, my business, I'm done.
oh
You know,
yeah,
even now.
right?
Even now.
I'm finished. Yeah, that was me that first winter. And let me tell you, people in La Crosse, Wisconsin don't really spend a ton of money
That's tough.
on photography. Yeah, because they're saving up for Christmas and you know presents and stuff. So then I ended up doing like some moonlighting at the Root Note, which is a coffee shop in town, and getting some money that way. But then was able to leave by April, and so then I was full time, then part time photography, then went back to full time, and so I've been full time since, April 2016.
It's awesome.
Yeah, which is great. And then during that time too, I was in a really horrible relationship, which if anybody's listened to my TED Talk, I talk about a little bit. It's okay if you haven't watched it, it's fine. I don't expect people to watch
You gotta
it.
say that a little more. She had a TED Talk, so.
It was
everyone
a
has
TEDx talk, so it wasn't on like the international platform.
I'll brag for you. It's a TED Talk. Not
TED
a lot
Talk.
of people have had a TED Talk.
Yeah, but I was in so at this point, I'd been divorced since like 2012. And so I'd been single and kind of dating. And dating around here is weird because I feel like everybody knows everybody and like whatever. And I was in this relationship with someone, and at first it was fine. Like, he was really great. He was really nice. And then in retrospect, it's like he was grooming me so that I wouldn't leave when he would choose not to be nice, which is what happened. And so then the first year of photography, like, I was dealing with that. And then as I'm full-time, I also ended up moving out because it wasn't a safe situation for me, and then having to deal with that. So it's like I'm starting this photography business, I'm learning how to be myself, I'm getting out of this relationship, which is really emotionally like taxing, but all of it kind of forced me to figure out, what is it you really want? Who are you? Who do you want to be? And
I think that's one of those where people say, I feel like photography for sure, because it has a jumping in point that's not... So a lot of people have taken good photos with a nice camera phone, because there's nice camera phones. And then someone will say like that, like validation of, that's a nice photo, I really like that, could you do more? And then the jumping in point to get started with photo isn't crazy. Like, if you really want to, I think a lot of people can attainably get a used camera, one used lens, like you said, a nifty 50 is $150, which I mean is still like, that's a good chunk of money, but it's not like, oh my gosh, I got to invest $10,000 right away. You know?
The financial barrier.
So I feel like a lot of people jump into that, and then kind of what you're saying there is when people are like, okay, I kind of do it on the side, I feel like a lot of people get stuck there. And then when you say like, I just jumped in full time, I don't think everyone can do that. Like, I think you really just have to be like, this is what I want to do. I think a lot of people would be interested hearing that when you say that, because it's like I hear so many people say that to me, like, when do I know that you don't?
Right, and for me, I knew when it was the really when I made that choice, it was the culmination of my entire life, which sounds really dramatic. I am a dramatic person, but it really was, where it's like, I am so sick of everybody else's fucking shit. And actually, I'm sick of my own shit, of listening to other people, because look where it got me. I mean, at that point, things weren't bad, but I'm like, what is life about? What is it about? Because if this is what I've been preparing for my entire 30 years, so I was your age, like, this is not what I want. I have to do something else. It's like this visceral feeling inside of you that like forces you to change. Like, people might sit in mental discomfort, but to me, it went past my mental and emotional discomfort to the point where I was physically uncomfortable with myself and what I was doing. And so I had to do something different, because I couldn't live in this body with what I was doing. And so for me, that was my point. But like, I also didn't have, and chose not to at this point, have a family, a partner, kids. You know, I didn't own a house. Right. So for me to make that change, like, yes, it was scary, but like, I didn't have as much physically on the line. Did you see that? Ninja. B. So it was, I don't want to say it was easier, but it was different than maybe someone that's like, I have to keep healthcare for the kids, or I have to. It's kind of like when people, so that relationship that I got out of, when people are like, how did you know that you were done? Because like, I'd been done for such a long time, but like, leaving, the idea of it was so hard. But like, the day that it happened, it's like just something inside of me just knew, like, when you reach your rock bottom, which that looks different for everybody. Rock bottom meaning like, okay, I literally have had enough, I have nothing left. It's different for everybody, and you just know. You just know.
It's just like, I gotta do it.
You know, I just remembered something, and that was when I decided to quit my job and go full time. I remember going to a bar down here, and I was like going to break the news to two of my friends that I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this photography thing full time. I'm ready. And I was so nervous, because at that point I couldn't even call myself a photographer. I had to hand out business cards being like, when people are like, this is what I do, and I said Dahli Durley photographer, because I couldn't say it. It wouldn't come out of my mouth. I was like, this is what I do. Anyway, and I'm going to tell them I'm going to be a photographer. I announce it. I try to be excited, and they both look at me, and one girl goes, oh, but like, what are you really going to do? And it just broke my heart, because it was going back to like other people projecting their feelings or their fear onto you. Which, you know, I think for being a photographer or an artist in today's age, you really have to just devote yourself to doing it, because people that don't have that inclination, or maybe are still stuck in this idea of like you work a 9-to-5 job and that provides all of your support for you, don't get it.
Well, I feel like it comes from people who know personally they wouldn't have the drive to do that.
Yeah.
And that
well, I
took
can't
me-
do it, so how could you do it?
It took me so long to figure that out, because people would be like, well, what are you really going to do? Which is always just like, you know, just a stab to the heart. And it's what it's really saying is they could never do that, because it's just like...
And who said that to them? Is that something that their dad said to them,
Yeah.
and did their grandpa say that to their dad? So you're dealing with people. Is it like, do you even feel that way? Or is this like your family pathology of how
Yeah.
they've chosen to live their
But
life
it's in
being
like
projected?
once, you know, and it's like maybe someone said that to them, so they instantly say, what are you really going to do? And they're not even really thinking that, but like that's what's been preached to them. You know, it's just such a funny thing, because in that moment, those always meant the biggest heartbreak to me. Like I was like, dude, you know, you got to support me. And at the same time, it's like, yeah, so many different variables, like you said. Did someone tell that to them? And I think a lot of people just are like, they would love to do that, but no, they couldn't, you know? They just don't have that passion.
I mean, my mom was like that. She was straight up heartbroken when I told her what I was doing, and she was just in tears, like basically being like, I didn't come to this country so you could be poor.
Right, I
mean,
remember you telling me that.
But it's like, Mom, I've been poor anyway.
Yeah.
I've been doing all the shit that all y'all told me to do,
Yeah.
that you told me to do, and look where I'm at.
That's tough.
You know, and so then, like, if I'm going to be poor, why don't I just be poor on my
why don't you
own
be
terms?
poor and at least happy?
Yeah.
Well, so that was a big thing. So then did she ever, like, was that the general thing? Was it changed over time? Or?
She came around when I started showing her my paychecks.
Right.
And when she could see that I was able to pay for myself, pay for rent, have a savings account, maybe help her out with some stuff, that's when she got quiet
I
about
think it's
it.
always, people are coming from that stigma of like, oh, you're not going to make money.
I mean, you can not make money.
Yeah, you certainly can.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the photography point of it is just people look at just, I'm taking photos, and it's just so much more.
It's the experience.
You
So
know.
like going back to like when you make a product for someone, you know, and like you watch Casey and Caleb, the Hansons, they sent me like this really nice video about how they
we'll
felt.
put it on there. Oh, yeah.
Sure. But it's so much more, because when they look at the photo,
Yeah.
people could say, oh, that's a nice photo. And then that person will be like, thanks. And if you were someone that was someone they gave money to and they didn't like, because people don't like giving money to assholes, they might say, yeah, you know, I love this picture, but like the photographer, like he was really dicey. Like I didn't know how much this was going to cost in the end. And like he was kind of like weird. Like they remember the experience getting to that image.
It's like a gateway.
It's a gateway. So then how nice is it to have them say, oh yeah, this picture, oh my gosh, I loved it. Our photographer was so much fun. And even if this was like the only picture that turned out, it was totally worth like, you know, doing whatever. It's about the experience, and people will pay for a great experience, I think.
I think that's one of the biggest things that is the draw to me, is like that mutual experience of everything you go through. It's so much more fun in the moment. I think that's what gets me, you know, going on however many years of doing things. It's like, how do you do it over and over? People are like, do you get sick of it? And it's like, I really get to know the people, and it's really like, you kind of get, I don't want to be like too cheesy and be like, oh, I get the privilege, but it's like you do get to be a part of their happiness, and you get to experience it with them. You know, it almost turns not into a job if you do it the right way, and you know that you caused that in a way. Like you were,
Yeah. You're
you
part
gave
of their
that
life.
to them, they gave it to you, you know.
Especially if you're shooting families and people, you will be in their life for forever. Like I know with some of my weddings, it's like, and this is kind of a macabre like mindset, but like I know when I shoot wedding photos, like this will be at your funeral like 60 years from now. Or, and this is a little unfortunate, but like a couple years ago I had a friend pass away, and one of the pictures or major pictures that they used at his funeral was one that I had snapped of him.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it really hit me, like, wow, like
Yeah.
when you document someone's life in, especially visually with photo or video, like you're in their life forever.
Yeah. And it's so much more than like, that's a great picture, but it brings up like, man, that was a fun day, wasn't it? Man, that was, you know, remember this joke, remember this thing that happened, you know, we were being silly. And it's like an excuse for them too, because we're just so, like, I know for me, it's just like either work or family time. It's not really much in between. And you get so much little of just like, hey, remember when we just messed around and like just took photos of random, you know, just us hanging out? Like, people don't really do that as much anymore.
Yeah.
All right, let's do you want to do more stuff about yourself, or do you want me to just like ask random questions?
I feel like I jumped around a lot. I would like you to ask me what you feel like you need to know from me.
All right, because it's at 10:50.
Okay,
You're
good.
going to get picked up in like 20 minutes?
I guess it's not hot in the sun here.
Let me think of more questions. What is that? You good?
I guess it's not hot in the sun here.
The sun does get hotter than not in the sun, I think. Science.
Are my boobs too? No, my boobs are fine. Okay.
Well, it's kind of towards the end, so I hope.
I hope you would tell
I mean,
me.
you know, at the beginning, it's like, if you're
Gosh.
at the end and like, oh, my boobs are out the whole time. That's that would get more views.
I am so motherfucking sick of people being like, oh my God, I have so many followers, like we were talking about before.
Annoying.
But they have followers because they're showing titties.
Big time.
Like,
Which kind of ties into what you were saying before. Pornography versus art.
Yeah, I mean, not like I pose a lot. I've been shooting more like that because I feel more drawn to that artistically right now. Not because it's sensual, but it's like an expression.
But some people are just straight up posting like just...
Spread eagle, get out
yeah.
here. There's children watching this.
It is... I don't know how to explain it, but I know it when I see it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, that's kind of like, I don't know, there's just some where you're like, there's really no purpose here but to show your whole butt, you know?
I mean, you see me show my butt. That's on my personal page. When I do my Skims reviews, people want to know. People want to know.
People need to know. Well, yeah, it's like, if the people, you got to give them what they want.
You know, honestly, so I keep my personal Instagram is very different than my business Instagram for weddings and such. I mean, I post it all in there, but part of me posting like my underwear reviews or when I do vibe checks in the morning, I just wear a t-shirt and my underwear. One is like, I want to show that I don't care. 2, I'm testing myself. Do you really care?
Yeah.
And 3, I was so ashamed of my body for so long that I really feel like at 35 I've come into my own and I own every part of me, even if it's shitty or not perfect.
Well, and I think people have to understand that the perfect bodies that you see, whether it be on like social media or wherever, are always fake. There's
Oh my
always,
God.
I mean, to Photoshop a skinnier face, but it takes 2 seconds. I mean, and you can go into detail and like hard depth of it, but I mean, you know, I see so many people who screwed up on one little part of their photo and you can see where they kind of push it, you know, and it's everywhere.
Oh, I love looking for,
Professional to amateur.
Actually, there are a couple photographers that I love looking for that stuff where I've seen it's a beautiful photo of them, but like, let's say there's a bunch of straight lines in the background
Right.
and like
Bendy.
they go from being straight, whoop.
Yep. And it's just like,
So
I think
funny.
more people need to know that the standard that you're basing on, if it's not real, which so much of it isn't even real, it's like, it's just like, I have goals of where I want to look and be, and it affects everyone, but at the same time you have to know, like, I mean, when you're like, oh, this movie, this guy looks so ripped, it's like, they worked 6 months, they worked out nonstop with the best trainers in the world to get one shot of that one perfect day, you know, and it's just like, no one can, you know, I don't know.
Yo, I deal with people all the time in photography with that, especially, and this isn't just,
That's probably one of the biggest things.
oh my gosh, yeah, and it's like I think to have a successful shoot, I think it's so important to work with people ahead of time. So like, I always like to have a FaceTime call, but texting and calling and trying to figure out like, what are you wearing? I straight up ask people, I'm like, is there anything you're self-conscious about?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
for real.
Which is a whole new can of worms.
It is a new can of worms, but you have to open that up, because if someone's like, I don't like my stomach, then because I'm the professional, it's up to me to say, all right, listen, if you don't like your stomach, I want you to love these photos. I like you however you are, but if that's going to make you not like the photo because that's all you're going to focus on, like, let's make sure we wear something that doesn't show it. Not to say you shouldn't be ashamed of it, but if that's not something you're ready to deal with right now, I don't want to put you in a position where when you see this photo, because it affects me, right? If they're like, oh, I hate this photo. Well, do you hate the photo, or do you hate yourself?
It can be the greatest photo.
Absolutely. It could be the most cinematic, well lit, your dress is flowing in the wind and you guys are super in love, but if you hate yourself,
and you see it, and then it really, that one, because I don't do a good job of that, and then they'll be like, and you're like looking at it, like I'm like, are we looking at the same picture? Because I think that's flawless, but they're like, I really don't like this part of me, and that's all they look at,
Right. So it's like coaching beforehand, especially if I shoot women that are doing boudoir or like nudie things and they are self-conscious. There's like this whole new thing we go through.
It's a whole, like, I would imagine, I've never done boudoir, but I would imagine boudoir is like almost more, like, I feel like once you get to the shoot day, that would be the fastest thing. Like the photos would be like boom, boom, boom.
It's the mental prep beforehand.
Oh yeah.
So I'm a big believer that, like, if I'm going to photograph people, I need to know what it's like on the other side of the camera too, right? So I know what they're going through. And so my first, actually only like super nude shoot I ever did, as part of this body positivity campaign in DC, and this guy photographed me naked, and it was like the ultimate test of like, okay, I say that I love myself, but like, do I really love myself? And it's one of the pictures he took of me is one of my favorite pictures of all time. But it was only weird for like the first 5 minutes, and it wasn't weird because he was a guy and I was a girl. It was like I just was not used to being so exposed, mentally, emotionally, and physically. But then after I got used to it, I was fine.
Yeah.
But I had also done a lot of prep before that too, because I knew, all right, I don't want these pictures to be, I'm not used to seeing myself naked, and because I see myself naked, then I hate it because I'm not used to it. I did a lot of prep beforehand where I'm like, all right, girl, if you're going to have a naked picture, let's look at yourself a couple seconds every day, get used to it so you're not surprised. Yeah,
so even like, it doesn't even have to be boudoir, but just in general with clients and stuff. I mean, is it like a month? Is it 6 months? Is it like just a day before process of, is it vary?
Months.
Months, yeah.
I say months.
Because it's just a mental, like, I mean, they do have to prepare.
It's so mental. I mean, I feel like video and photo are so intimate because right now you have people that are taking selfies, but they have so much control because they're seeing themselves in real time. They can adjust angles. They have the apps on their phone to do whatever. Whereas if you have someone like you or me looking at them, we don't know their insecurities. We can't read their mind. We see what we see.
Right.
And so there's a lot of trust that has to happen there.
Yeah.
And that trust is built when you're not an asshole, when you create like I would say like a safe space for people.
Yeah.
Where they can ask questions, say how they feel, and like you can hear that and be like, all right, well, if you feel this way, let's do X.
Yeah. And it's like for me, I feel like where I fall short on a lot of that stuff is like you can go so many different ways with photography. Like I am very much into the technical because I think photography isn't natural for me. So I'm like, this lighting looks nice, this pose is nice, but then something can still be wrong, Like I feel like there's so many things you have to hit that you're trying to do almost the impossible because they have to love it, which I mean starts with them loving themselves and, smiling and, I don't know. There's just so many things that can go wrong. It's just almost like a setup for failure, like with photos.
And that's why it's so energetically sucking for people, especially like you and me, if we're high functioning introverts, I'm going to lump you in with me, is because there's so much that can go wrong and like you have to output so much energy to like calculate all of these things that are happening at once because there's really 5,000 decisions in the moment that have to be made. And this is why and how you can charge more money, because if you're actually invested and you make it an enjoyable and like a life-changing in some cases process, then you can ask for more. But if you're just going to be a photographer that's like, I'm never going to make it full time, I'm just on the side, I'm just doing it for the likes, then yeah, charge your $50. Or I actually saw a photographer charging $15 for a head shoot. I think I poop out $15 in a day. What do I even do with that?
You should get that looked at, but it's for a different time.
It's because I eat too much Chop Shop. We don't have that up here, but the salads, the juices are fabulous.
Is that a good? So saying you poop out $15 is a thumbs up review for it?
I think that I eat high quality food.
Well, I just want people to know. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Organic.
That's hilarious. No, I think that brings up so many things in my head, like when people turn to you, say you're at a family event or something, and people are like, hey, can you take this picture real quick? And you're not in that zone, that you just know so much behind it that you didn't get to do, and you're almost like, don't even bring up that can of worms.
I will straight up tell people, like, don't tag me in this.
Yeah.
I do.
Because it is your business, it's...
I realized, and this is something that maybe people that are going into photography might value hearing, and you and I talked about this, but at the beginning, when I wasn't charging a lot, I had a lot of pain in the ass customers that were so nitpicky, that were so complainy, that were like kind of demeaning. And I was like, man, is this what photography is about? Because if it is, I need to not sign up for this that I just signed up for. But I realized that when I started asking for more money almost equates value and respect. Like if I'm asking for more money, that allows me to live, like, respect myself more, live a life that is easier and good for me. And then the client, I think, feels like they have higher expectations, but you're living a life where, like, you can meet that and have the time to invest in equipment and skills and whatever. But those clients that were not necessarily rich clients, but willing to pay more, were less of a hassle for me. Not saying that they weren't expecting more, but because it wasn't like, oh my God, like $100, we don't value this enough for $100, so we're going to be so nitpicky and cranky and yelly and bossy and demandy. I like putting E on things. I just didn't have that when I started asking for more money. And then it was kind of a win-win, because I have more money now. I can actually live a better life, and I'm happier, and you're really happy, because when I'm happy, I create better product and I have more time to invest in you for a better experience, and then you're happier. So like, we both win. We both win. I can't imagine. I mean, like, I used to charge, I don't even know what I used to charge. I think I did a photo shoot for like $50 once. $75 was a lot for me. I used to charge less than $1,000 for weddings. I remember the first time I actually asked for more money for a wedding. I'd watched one of those Sue Bryce videos, and I was so desperate for money. I'm like, all right, this girl, I need to pay some rent. Like, I cannot be getting evicted. And this client asked me what my price was, and I was charging $1,000, and I was like, okay, I really need the money. I'm just gonna ask. And I like could have thrown up. I was so nervous, and I was like, 2,000? And the client was like, oh my God, absolutely. And I kicked myself because I'm like, I could have asked for 3, and they probably would have said the same thing. So you saw the value in me. You were willing to give me more, but because I didn't see it in myself, I ended up fucking myself in not a good way.
And who knows, that stuff is always tough, because you're like, who knows beforehand, like how many clients before, there's such a feeling of like, I just can't do it at this price anymore. And then 2, it's scary for people, because what if you lose that client? And I think there's got to be a point where it is tough. I don't know the answer for it for sure, but if you go into a wedding and you're like, man, I'm getting paid half of what I should,
oh my God,
your stuff's not going to look good anyway.
How you are reflects in your work. 100%. I can look at a series of my work, and I can tell where I was at emotionally in my life, because unknowingly, because that's how I saw things, that's how I shot things. And that's reflected in our work. And the same for clients. If clients are having, a shitty experience, you'll see that in their faces. You'll see that in how they hold their body. So like, if we can both be happy, if we can both have a happy experience. You'll get the photos you want. You'll get the experience you want. I'll get the life that I want that allows me to give you that experience. We have this symbiotic good relationship. We can't lose. But it's energetic suck, right? So like, let's say I was an amazing photographer and I gave the other person an amazing experience and the photos were bomb. But if I'm not asking for enough money, it's like I'm this pitcher and I keep pouring out, but there's not enough to pour back in to replenish my cup.
Yeah.
So then that's how people get burnt out. That's how people feel drained. That's how people are like, I can't fucking do this anymore. Photography is a tool.
Yeah.
It is a tool. Your job is a tool because it's the means to an end. But what is your end? What do you want your life to be about? And like, this sounds very like maybe Eckhart Tolle or Oprah-ish, but like, if you're just shooting just for photography's sake, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
But like, you have to see it as like, what is this life that I want? How do I want to live? And then how do I use this tool to get to there?
Yeah.
It's a vehicle.
Yeah. Well, it's like I'll do realty photography, you know, so it's not like you're taking photos of any person. So it's like, it's harder to do, but then I know the person that I get it for, that like realtor or realtors, I like them and I have a good relationship and I want them to succeed. And so that's, you find those different things that power you through it. Like, so you like serving people. Yeah. You like making them happy. You also like paying the bills for your house at home. So if you're using your tool in that situation, then that fits. Yeah. But like, let's say like my modus operandi, is that how you say it in Latin? Sure. Oh shit, I don't even know. We'll voice dub it over. Is I love documenting things. Yeah. And like documenting love and like seeing people be really happy and stuff. If that's my mode of operandi, or like why I'm doing it, and I love that because at the end it makes me feel like I did something that mattered in someone's life. Yeah. But then I'm not getting paid enough and then I have a shitty attitude, then I'm actually not using the vehicle right. Yeah. I'm driving the car with no gas, and then instead of driving to San Diego, I'm driving to Tijuana in the middle of nowhere in a not cool place of Tijuana. A lot of Tijuanans who are watching this are really offended now. Listen, I love Tijuana. I would love to go. Let's drink some tequila, but I'm saying like... Don't do that. You already burned the bridge. You're driving... No, I will rebuild that bridge. I will knock down any wall and I will rebuild a bridge. That's what's up. That's what's up, honey. All right, so you got a friend picking you up soon, so just go with whatever you were thinking when we first talked about this and you were like, I really want people to know this or that. Okay, this is what I want people to know. This is what I want people to know, is that anything is possible, and I know that sounds cliche as fuck. Anything is possible. The only limits we have are the limits we put on ourselves. Right? If you say you can't do it, well, then guess what? You probably can't do it. But if you start saying, well, maybe, well, then maybe you can do it. And where there's a will, there's a way. I didn't go to school to be a photographer. Photography wasn't even on my radar until like six and a half years ago. And it's not until we figure out what we really want, we figure out ways to get there. And the vehicle of photography just ended up being my way. And, you know, I invested my time because that's what I had. I had YouTube. I was scrappy. You know, I built my business slowly. I started with a donated camera and a lens that was $150. And then over the last 5 years, that's how I was able to buy your Sony from you and invest in nicer lenses and classes and more shoots to like get better. So it's not that you can't do it, but like, what are you going to allow yourself to do? And then maybe asking yourself like, well, why do I think that? Yeah. It's a lot, being a photographer and being a person, it's a lot of like psychological dismantling. Mm-hmm. Like, why do I think I can't do that? Yeah. Why don't you just do it and see what happens? But I think there's just a lot of like looking at yourself, why would this happen to me? And then you use that as like a tool for the work that you do. Yeah, absolutely. Anything's possible. I look at my life and I'm like, listen, if I could start out living in a fucking shotgun shanty in a farm town of 711 people, broke as fuck, and now I mean, I have a great life.
I love my life, and I cannot be apologetic about it, because I've lived through so much shit and I've made so many mistakes and I've given up so much that like I savor everything I have. So like those days where I slept on the staircase and when I couldn't afford a can of beans and I'm so depressed that I can't get out of bed for months because I'm so sad my grandma's gone, you know, going through a divorce or going through that shitty relationship or feeling like I don't even know what's right or wrong because I lived everybody else's decisions for me. The life I have now is even more delicious because I appreciate it, because I know what it's like to not have it. And like anybody can have this. You just have to make your own choices. And I don't know what that is for people, but it all begins with really fucking looking at yourself and like, who are you? What do you really want? What's keeping you back from that? I mean, it's you, but like, why?
That was a great way to end it. That was really good.
Thanks, Daddy.
Boom.
Oh.
Plug some of your, I think I saw you right. Plug some of your stuff, where people can find you and things.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, first off, thank you for your kind words. I'll save my tears for later. My wedding, my adventurous lovers who like to go places and be in love and have weddings and celebrate. The letter I, the letter M, Dahli Durley, DAHLI I'm Dahli Durley. That's my Instagram account. My website is dahlidurley.com. If you want to book, if you want to follow my personal life where I get real cray, that's Hello Dahli Baby.
I always say that out loud. Hello, Dahli Baby.
Hello, Dahli Baby. I have that. Also, if you or someone you love is going through a hard time in regards to like domestic abuse, my TED Talk might be a good video for them to watch, some perspective. Also, I'm going through a program right now and I do some commercial work and I'm trying to beef up that side of my portfolio. So in the coming month, I have a new website that has some of my grittier work, some of my commercial product-y kind of work. And we're going to use my real name for that, DoloresDurley.com. It's not up yet, but it's almost done. But yeah.
And you have the Phoenix thing. I like that.
Yes, absolutely. So I've been involved in documenting the protests happening in Phoenix because we have a lot going on in our city. And so it's me and a bunch of rogue photographers that we like to think of ourselves as grassroots photojournalists. And so I started this group with a guy named Tommy, and it's called the Phoenix Photographers Collective. And so we provide a platform and a resource for photographers that are on the ground, taking photos of what's really happening. You know, we're not paid like CNN or Fox News. Like, this is what we're seeing on the streets. We also provide an avenue for education if photographers are like, oh, I want to learn, like, how do I get into photojournalism more? We have classes, and there's more to come for that. And so that's Phoenix Photographers Collective. I would have to look up the Instagram because it's so new, but I'll give that to you. Phoenix Photographers Collective.
And you have taught classes to people too.
I have. Yep. I go in to businesses and I can either teach them how to use their camera so they can take their own photos, or I can help people learn how to use their iPhones more effectively. And I mean, here's the scoop. Maybe you couldn't blow up a picture on a billboard that you take on an iPhone. Maybe you could. Yeah, it's doable. But I teach people how to use their camera themselves, because if they're around all the time, if they're an influencer or they're a smaller business and they're like, hey, we can't hire you all the time, hire me to teach you so then you can have your own tools.
There you go.
I try to make it not hard. Let's make it easy.
Let's make it easy.
Let's make it easy.
I feel like that's the end for Olive Garden. Let's make it easy. You know,
Get that soup and salad, bitch.
Get that soup and salad, bitch. That would be your own flavor on it. All right. Well, thank you so much. Trying to think of a good thing to say. Anything else you want to add in?
You the real MVP, you know?
I really am.